I mean, the entire banking system's a wild, insane casino that makes no sense to me, especially after witnessing all of this. And the shittier, smaller banks are like the really shitty small casinos that you see in AC. And so they basically take all your capital, deposits, say it's $1 billion or $5 billion, and they somehow get to loan out 10 or 20 times or 30 times as much money, which seems kind of nuts if you think about it. And so when the people who want their money back look for their money, let's say it's, they took in $1 billion and they lend out 20. Sounds fucking crazy off the bat, right? And the depositors want their money back. They want the $1 billion back. Well, there's no money left in the bank to pay it back. And that's what happened to Signature Bank. It's called a run on the bank. It's what happened to Silicon Valley Bank. The problem was exacerbated, and this can happen to any bank, right? No bank in America has enough cash to meet its deposits.
Theoretically, because of fractional reserve banking, they can all be insolvent.
Every single bank.
They created that money.
It's, and we'll get into it in a second.
I feel like
it's the fractional reserve. It's like they take in $1 and they lend out 9 or something.
Exactly.
But it is a concept that's hard to for a brain to understand.
It's pretty fucked up.
Well, the only way that it could fall apart is if everybody tries to get their money at once.
Right. And I think that after this weekend, a lot of people are wondering, like, why should I? So fractional reserve banking is not a bad idea. But the problem is you give your money to a bank and they pay you. They don't give you the profits of the loans they make, right? They put that in their pocket. They put that in their trader's pocket.
That's the business model.
Yeah, and you get shit. And a lot of people are asking themselves, why should I participate in this? Why am I taking all the downside? They're taking all the upside.
And why do you?
To me, I think that it's something that I'm personally reconsidering here after seeing Lehman Brothers, after witnessing a bunch of banks fail, and now these 2 banks fail. It's like, what's the point? Why am I? What benefit do I fucking get?
For
letting you lend out my money? Would you let me lend out your money and keep all the profits? Does that make sense?
And I mean, the average person doesn't think that they're taking any sort of risk.
Right. That's
when
the
they
lie.
Leave money in the bank. They're just like
told, I think.
They're like, I need to pay my rent and my bills, and this is just
it's a nice, convenient way to do that.
Yeah, exactly. But nobody in their mind is like, yeah, I'm taking all this.
What's the other option?
Yeah, that's the other problem, right? You have no other option, and
I mean, to be honest, yeah, when you put your money, I see what the other option is to invest it. But even then, I think I'm investing my money through a bank. I'm like, does that bank, if that bank goes under, do my investments go under, or do I still have those?
Yeah, absolutely, right?
Okay, so I actually don't own those stocks. I'm like, and so I really
they're never, because they never actually get.
Is that the not your keys, not your coins of stocks?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
And you have $250,000.
So if I have let's say you have 10 grand of Amazon through Bank of America. You don't have 10 grand of Amazon.
No, not unless you. So there's actually a way to do that with so-called certificate form. So if you ask the bank, no, I don't want you guys to hold my stock. I actually want the certificates, like these old-fashioned medallions. I actually have
That's the not your keys, not your coins.
That's the one way you can, and then you put it in a drawer, and you're like, you're safe or something.
That's like you hear someone's great-grandfather died, and they're like, I got IBM shares, and it's like an actual piece of paper.
Yeah, and there's guys in the back of the bank, I've had to do this a bunch of times, where they actually have these, they're called medallion certificate. It's this whole process, and they're like, oh yeah, I do think we do that. And you go back and there's a secret chamber. They stamp it.
Didn't Enron certificates become very after the fact?
Oh yeah. People have them on their walls and
they're
shit.
Collector
items. But I mean, I think
that is kind of cool. Yeah.
I think the system's just so stupid because JP Morgan, I saw their, people were memeing about it, their all their accounts and what you get. Every single one of them was 0.01%. It's like, why? What benefit do I get? The return you get for depositing.
Oh, you buy it. It's basically nothing.
Yeah. And it's like they actually think that they're doing you a favor. Yeah. And it's really...
I've argued with that with girls where they say they put their money in a savings account, and I was like, there's no such thing. It's like...
Well, there used to be.
There kind of used to be. I hate to be the old man.
Back in the day, it wasn't a lot, but we've been in a zero interest rate environment for 10 years.
Right, but they used to compete. They used to be like, oh, you're off. That bank's offering you 1%. I'm going to offer you 1.5%.
Now they're all nothing.
Yeah, it's like, fuck you. You have to put your money here or else.
It's only hey, where's more? The only things you're really dealing with is where are there more locations, I guess.
Yeah,
and then
it's a convenience thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and then what are the fees less, I guess.
And who's the least pain in the ass if you have to go deal with something?
Okay, yeah.
It's like an airline. We're just
well, there's mortgages too.
Mortgages will give you a mortgage.
People, that's the biggest thing these guys do. So they lend out all these mortgages, and if everybody wanted their bank money back, I saw one of these banks that we're talking about now, it was $40 billion in deposit money. So that's everybody. That's a liability to a bank. That's the other way. You think of it the other way around. A bank's asset is its depositors. No, that's a liability to them. They owe that money.
Yeah.
That's their biggest liability. What's on the asset side of the balance sheet? This bank with $40 billion in loans had $2 billion in cash. You're sitting there like, what's wrong with this picture?
Yeah.
That's like
It doesn't
FTX.
make a lot of fucking sense, right?
that's
It's
it.
a
Okay,
Ponzi
so that's
scheme.
every
I
bank.
went to jail for that.
Yeah.
But nobody's getting in shit.
I mean,
for this.
that's legal business. No. I mean, listen, I'm memeing a little bit, but ultimately, it's a little concerning that almost every institution in this country, banking institution, has $2 billion of cash, $40 billion of money that's somebody else's, and if 5% of those people wanted their money back, there's no cash left.
Yeah.
So what do they have to do? They have some bonds, right? Well, they might have to sell those bonds. Well, who do they have to sell the bonds to? Other banks.
Right.
They're in the same fucking position.
Right,
So,
unless the Treasury could take them back.
and so that's the other part is, okay, so...
But then they lose.
Right. The other banks let's say the other banks have the same problem. Well, the Fed says, well, don't worry about this. We'll print some money and buy those bonds from you. And if you think about it, it's like just a big circular definition of, well, how does the Fed print the money? Well, they can just print more money, and then the money you have in your pocket's worth less and less and less and less.
Right.
And it just becomes like...
And then the bank
charade.
loans out more money,
'Cause-
which makes the supply bigger. It's also
Yeah,
makes it
exactly.
money.
Yeah, it's just-
because
it never ends.
they were trying to say like all the VCs were like, yeah, this isn't a bailout, and you're like,
Okay.
isn't this kind of inflationary?
Okay, so now
That's the
I mean,
spicy...
this is like one of the most.
So to go, okay, so
many
then
moving parts.
that's
this
what
is
happened.
the spicy meatball, yeah.
Yeah, and I'll try to maybe because you guys probably both know a little bit more about this than me. So that's how it started. That's like the general gist of the banking system.
Well, let me talk real fast about.
And then what was
the
specific about
problem.
this one? Yeah.
So yes, exactly. So that's applicable to all banks, and if there's a crisis of confidence, it doesn't matter if the economy's good or bad. If everybody goes to the bank and withdraws their money, it's all turtles all the way down, as they say. So this bank. Some people are calling the CFO smooth-brained. I don't know if that's an insult or what, but apparently the guy bought a large amount of treasuries, which you would think is the safest thing you could buy.
10-year,
right?
too.
Well, so yeah. But if you think about it, just take a step back. The government debt, right, is our government especially, with all the guns and army, is the safest country in the world, according to everybody, right? But what's the strange thing here is that this bank collapsed by buying. Like, okay, if you loaned me all the money or you all the money, then you fucked up.
Sure.
If you bought Bitcoin with all the money, you fucked up, right? They didn't do any of that. They bought the safest fucking thing that you could buy.
Right.
And they still went
And they
bankrupt by buying the safest thing you buy.
Because
Which makes
of
you wonder. We can talk about, yes,
But that's
there's a
because the interest
reason.
rates
There's a
went up so
technical reason.
fast.
It's very important.
But didn't they?
But it
I
makes you
heard
like
people
sit there and scratch your head like, so what the fuck could they,
Yeah.
Now,
I
we
mean,
can explain the technicalities of what happened.
And I heard
But
they
it
were
still
like
makes you
investing in
wonder.
weird stuff too.
They do. They definitely
they
do
had
too,
some
but-
weird stuff, but like their main thing was that they just
Buying
invested
government.
in 10-year government bonds when the interest rates were 0. And then you're like, but I guess they got duped into.
Well, it's not a dupe thing. It's like, what else do you buy? Most people say
They
the
have
same
to,
thing.
yeah.
You have to buy that.
And so I don't know, like Bailouts or whatever. Because
Sure.
his whole thing is he goes, it's the Fed's fault because the Fed gives their forecasts and they were like, we're not raising rates. So then he's like, well, then they went and they bought these bonds, assuming that the Fed was not.
Well, but there's always a margin of
lying.
error on what the Fed says, so you
Sure.
can't.
Well, of course, and then again,
That's the game a
They
little bit,
react to
right?
like market conditions, right? They react to like their
Yeah, you
reactionary.
can't. You can hold
somewhat.
them account. Like I kind of disagree.
Anyways,
with
supposed
that.
to spread
I
it out.
disagree-
You're right.
I
It's supposed to
disagree with
buy
that, too.
2 years,
Yes.
10 years, 5 years, 30
3
years.
months?
All sure. 2 months, 1 month. You
Yeah.
can buy them all, and but the weirdest part is most banks fail because it's like, oh yeah, John lent his girlfriend's company $1 billion, and it's gone, so we gotta fucking make up for that, and like that's really where most financial institutions fail, right? Like we bought these NFTs.
Is that happen a lot?
No, but you like, well, so I have a friend there's a big bank called Deutsche Bank, and it's like the messiest bank by far, right? And he's like,
Why is that like a small? Is that like a small one that's just like cowboy
no,
run?
huge.
Oh.
Deutsche Bank is Germany.
Didn't they have?
Why
like,
is it
the-
such a mess?
Oh man,
Didn't they have the rogue trader?
They've had every.
What's the rogue trader?
They've had some rogue traders.
Like guys just like loses $1 billion.
He just decides to trade
like doesn't
and
tell
not tell
anybody,
anybody that he's
and
trading.
just goes and loses $1 billion. And
Wait,
then
a banker like that
a
works
trader like works on a trading desk, and he just like basically
How
probably.
are they allowed to even do
Well,
that?
what happens is I think they dig themselves such a hole, and they
I
go
can't
like,
say I've done this or not done this, but basically, hypothetically, what you would do is you pick up the phone you call Goldman Sachs and you're like, hey, it's John from Goldman. Listen, we at Goldman Sachs, and you're like an intern there. Like we here at Goldman Sachs, we're really big fans of Tesla. Yeah, saw him on Rogan. Gonna have to buy $1 billion of that for Goldman Sachs. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And like when they come back and they're like, all right, you bought 1 million shares of Tesla. It's 122.225, and you're like, and you write it down, and you're like, all right, now I have to figure out how to make sure nobody finds out about this.
How do you do
And
that?
There's sort of two ways. The first is what you're alluding to, which is like, you make money and your boss is like, oh shit, good job, John. And that's in your harebrained fucking mind.
You think
that's why you think it's gonna happen.
Yeah, that's how you
and
get
the
a
reason
promotion.
it's what you said, where you're like, I'm down like 200 grand like over the last week. I need a big trade.
Yeah.
Assuming you're even a trader allowed to do this stuff,
yeah.
but like 9 times out of 10, they call security and they're like, let's get sell all
Someone
this stuff.
finds
I
out
mean,
and then they
you
get
almost
fired.
always go to jail.
But I think 1 time out of 10,
Did the company lose all the money?
one time,
I mean, I'm sure we don't know about people who have kind of pulled this
absolutely,
off.
because 1 time out of 10, some guys like, everyone's like causing commotion, and one guy's like the older, like senior guy's like, hold up. Let's see how this goes. Let's fucking do this.
Sure.
Yeah. Come here, kid. You're about to get a lesson in how this works. And it's like probably half the Wall Street traders who made it like started out that way, but it's
Like took some wild swing at the beginning.
yeah, and they're like, "Whoa, what the fuck is Paul doing? Oh yeah. And this is working. Let's fucking."
Is
do
that
it."
the equivalent of like the guy that's like he's gonna lose his job in his house and he takes like everything and just puts it on black and that's what see what's happening? You're
Yeah,
like,
I think so. Yeah, but like, I mean, the big bad ones of these banks are like guys who literally find a way to like they hack the system and they hide that they've been buying,
like Sam Bankman-Fried, essentially. Like, but
exactly
at
right.
a bank.
Yeah, and it's happened like literally at every bank. It's happened to the tune of over $1 billion. Yeah, at least a dozen times.
wait, say that again.
Well, he's just saying they'll place trades and like they can hide it, like the.
Oh, I see what you're saying. That
record
that's
of
what
it, so
SBF
nobody
did.
finds.
Yeah, because
it.
you're working there and you're like, well, what I realized is nobody checks this thing.
Yeah.
So if nobody checks this thing, let me try doing it with $1
Yeah.
million. And then a week goes by and no one's like, who bought that? Who bought that? That meme stock or
Okay.
something. And it's like, okay.
So do you
nobody
think they were
noticed.
doing that at this company?
No.
Okay.
So this company mostly lent. They actually had relatively conservative, as we know.
Yeah, they
Okay,
did.
so
They-
everyone was saying
that's the
they
weirdest.
straight
I
up
don't know. I just
got
kept
fucked
hearing
losing the
that
money
like
on
people
bonds.
saying they had weird stuff. Or,
They do a couple weird things.
Yeah,
But it was
Okay.
only like 1%. But
Yeah.
some people are still saying it should be 0%.
No, they had so
That's right.
one of their things was, and it's on their thing, is the premium wine. So if
Yes.
you look at their like
Yeah.
balance sheet, there's like 1.1 billion, and it said premium wine, and it was because they lend money to vineyards.
It's not that crazy.
It's not that crazy, but the way it was phrased, you go like
They
you guys
also
put
lend money like companies. I know, like in biotech, they used to lend a lot of money to biotech companies that lose money, which is
Yeah.
probably not a good, generally not a great idea. But they made it work. And
Yeah.
I think the weirdest thing is that they went broke buying the safest, like what's considered around the world to be the safest
thing
investment in the
that
world.
next
not
to cash.
Safe and liquid are different things.
So you
right?
really don't think it was like anything that crazy going on at this bank?
And that's kind of what makes it scary.
Yeah.
Right. And so this is the real upshot here, is that the meme warfare that can, like, we live in such an interconnected world, which is such a stupid trope and kind of trite to say, but like between, I think, the lessons from GME and AMC, where a bunch of retards can sort of get together and buy a company that's not very valuable and make it really valuable and cause all kinds of chaos. Here you have like almost something more nefarious, where it's like a little panic can spark this like run on a bank very quickly. And if you have like hedge fund dirty tricks, like you start shorting the stock, then you
Yeah.
start. And apparently there's
you
a
can
guy on
make it
Twitter.
worse, like, pretty
Well, there's a
easily.
guy on Twitter who's doing this with First Republic, and I think he's
What's
going.
that?
To,
What's
I think
he
he's going to
doing?
jail. So he deleted all his tweets really quickly.
Too bad there's such a thing as the Wayback Machine.
I've tried that one too. That doesn't work. Yeah. I know every trick. Some weird guy like over the weekend. He's like, the FDIC is already at the First Republic office. He was like trying to cause a run on the bank. Like he thought he was slick, and
Really?
he deleted everything from his like Twitter, his LinkedIn. He's trying to like go dark, but like
I mean, is that illegal?
It
Is
is-
that
I think it is
is
a
that
crime,
the
yeah.
fire in a
Market-
crowded
yeah,
theater?
yeah, exactly right.
Market manipulation. I don't know if it's market manipulation.
it's a mix of all that shit.
Yeah.
Like,
I actually
it's-
heard. I was trying to listen to all the like. One of the things I feel like why like you're a good person to sort of hear your opinion on it, because like it's really hard to get like an unbiased. Everyone's like has skin in the game on this.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Not to say you probably have
all
none,
the
but
yeah, but like all the VCs or whatever who are essentially saying like, oh, like there's a run. You're like, you guys started it.
Well,
You
it's funny to
literally
say
all
that.
in your Slack channel.
in their
were
like chat groups and
in their
stuff.
chat groups are all like, we should all pull our money because who knows.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
And then they're like,
Yeah.
and then they all pull their money, and they're like, "Hey, there's a run on the bank." They're like, yeah, because you're all pulling your money out.
It's
Yeah.
like
You're
it's
doing
like that
it.
meme where the guy shoots. Why'd you do that?
Yeah,
You know?
totally.
And they're all like buddies. Like it's a small world.
It's. I think it's really scary, and I think that what's going to happen and what should happen, in my opinion, out of this is that we kind of debank a little. And I'm not sure that means like crypto necessarily or something like that, but like I still like sitting here synthesizing that I've been a financial analyst for 20 years. I carry one of these with me, by the way. I keep this on me at all times. This gentleman.
What is it?
Oh yeah.
Palm Pilot?
No.
Oh, calculator.
Far.
BlackBerry.
This is a HP 12C. I guarantee you, please.
What year is this from?
What
Well,
is it?
in the
that like-
80s, this was the thing on Wall Street, and nobody
This is
has
a-
one anymore.
This is a calculator.
Yeah, it's a calculator.
Yeah, try to do any kind of mathematical calculation on it, and it's
Well,
impossible because it's completely useless unless you know how to operate it. So
65
it's
times. Okay, yeah, no, it's every time it's
yeah, it
doing all
doesn't
sorts
work.
of
Yeah.
weird shit.
It's called it uses reverse Polish notation. So that's how you know it's good.
I don't know.
RPN. No, in the 80s on Wall Street, this is the only way you could calculate duration on bonds and all this shit. And I guarantee
In
you
a
nobody.
quick way.
Yeah, and I guarantee nobody at
So it was
Silicon
sort of like
Valley
a
ever
short
used one of these.
form like stock calculator.
Between suspenders, cocaine, and this, like this is basically your '80s Wall Street.
This is
kid.
what got
That's
us
your
where we are. This thing is pretty slick. Although I don't know where's like the clear button.
Don't even worry about it.
there isn't really a clear
I was like,
button.
where's the C button?
No, I had one. I had one of these as a kid, and it's like if you need to know like what the yield to maturity on a bond is that's rapidly changing, like this is what you would use. And to this day, like it's still actually kind of useful.
Did you actually carry that with you always?
I keep like so in prison. One of the terms you hear is I keep it on me or I keep it with me, and it means a gun.
Yeah.
So this is I don't leave home without it. I might have
so
to
funny.
discount a bond at any time.
Figure out some net present values or
It's
something.
all about PV. But no, in all seriousness, I think like why would anybody just sitting there logically let a bunch of like basically wackos at these banks, so-called professionals like me, take your money, lend it at not just like lend it, but lend it 20 times over, and all those loans, I'm not going to give you a fucking
That is
cent.
crazy to think of. I know that is
Right?
what it is, but someone says like, I give you $1, and then I go, I lend 20 people $1, and
you're
I'm
not-
like, well, I have that $1, so
Right.
I owe you on $1.
Well, but it would be
You're going
way-
to make a fortune, but I'm not giving you any.
Right.
and then I invest $1.
all you really get out of it, as far as I understand, is access to like a mortgage, because you probably
Yes.
wouldn't have like mortgages like
That's true.
like they exist.
And
currently.
you need to be able to pay for everything with your
But
card.
no. Well,
part-
not
that part hopefully will change,
necessarily,
right?
because I mean, if you have $1,000 in the bank and you can just pay, like you can buy your stuff with that money. But that's how like essentially things grow. Is that they?
But
go
isn't
and
there a
then
place where I could
seed
put
it.
my money into a bank, pay a fee, and they're not allowed to go
I think
lend it
that's
out?
I think that's what's going to
That's gonna what's
to be
coming.
honest.
Yeah.
Like,
well,
and-
no,
and-
but again, you do have coverage up until 250.
Well, that's the thing. So go to the other way though. You are sort of saying like that's the argument you're a little bit making, where it's like it is kind of crazy, but it's like, well, it is kind of guaranteed because then the government just bails them out if anything goes wrong.
Sure, but do you want to be on the receiving end of a bailout? Do you want to be like in that line? And what happens when the government?
Maybe not
needs-
if I'm a company, but if I'm like me right now and it was like, okay, I just lost like X amount of dollars, but I'm gonna get it in the next month. Like it's not. I don't know. Okay,
like
whatever.
Why participate in this insanely fragile like Rube Goldberg system
Yeah.
of like I like your idea, which is like, okay, here's my life savings, $100,000. You're my poor immigrant family, and you work really hard to make this money. I want you to hold this money for when I need it, and don't do fucking any
or allow
chicanery.
me to do
don't-
transactions.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, no. We need to lend this money out to like 100,000
They would not-
counterparties.
It would take a banker with the most willpower of any banker in the history to just let that money
Which
just
it
sit
sort
there.
of makes you wonder if Sam Bankman isn't wrong, because it's like, as much as like of a fuckboy he is, like you have to ask yourself, like he was just kind of doing what every other bank was doing. He didn't do it in.
They just can't get a government bailout because they're not a technical bank.
Yeah,
They're not
exactly,
even.
yeah.
They're not even like. In
They're
America.
not anything,
Yeah. Well, but they weren't even allowed to be in America. That's why they're in the
Right,
Bahamas.
right.
Because that was another thing. There were people who were like losing all this money, and I'm like, well, should I get my money back that I lost in FTX? Like,
right. It does.
I mean, I
What's
guess
the difference? Yeah.
well, is it that different? And like all the companies,
Not different at all.
That it's not. I know. And then all these companies who were like, well, we have to get our deposits because we'll lose our deposits, and we didn't know. But they're like, specifically, they're uninsured. Like uninsured against what?
Yeah, I mean, I feel two ways. Like, I don't fully agree with like the Twitter mob that was like, bail it out now or everything's going to shit. But I also don't think the bailout was a good idea.
Well, then bail it out now. Yeah, because you're right. It is such to. I mean, I don't totally know what I'm talking about, but like I'm watching people who definitely don't know what they're talking about on the internet. And it was like there's two groups. One is kind of like, yeah, we need to bail this out because it's going to be catastrophic for the economy. But most of those people are personally affected, so you can't.
Exactly.
They're all it's hard to listen to anything they're saying because they're all like. And then the other side just like hates billionaires, hates like tech bros, like so they're just like
or hates the government,
or hates the government,
yeah,
and they're also like we don't have any money anyways. Like a lot of people are like I don't have money, so what do I care if these people lose their money?